We got step 5 today. So just to let you know, we are going off of Dr. Lewis's 8 R's of gut and whole body health. We're going to be talking about ruminate, churn, adding in fiber and grit, and what that does for our overall health, especially with our gut health. Just as a recap, because I'm making everything just really curated here. Number 1 was removing offending foods. So when we're thinking about our overall health, we want to think about laying down the foundation of our health. And, a lot of research shows that about 90% of that inflammation in that body is rooted in gut health. Okay, that's going to cause those chronic diseases that we had talked about in the past. So to start here, steps 1 through 4 were fairly easy. What is, some offending foods that maybe we're ingesting that's causing disruption. So remember, we do have that complete food sensitivity test link that I can send out to you. I think it's still on sale for about $4. Of things for people, apples being one of them, which means apple cider vinegar is off the table. So what do you do if that's deemed healthy but your body doesn't approve? Okay, so those are some things that we can talk about. Step 2, reducing pathogens and biofilms. We are walking petri dishes. We get ourselves into all kinds of different bacteria and fungi, even parasites, all different kinds of organisms. A lot of them are beneficial, but then what about the ones that are invaders? Okay, they like to take up camp, so to speak. They hide in what's called biofilms. So something that you can kind of maybe see more of is in your oral health. So if you wake up and you notice maybe some little sliminess going on there, that's the start of a biofilm, which is going to harden into, tartar and plaque, but that's bacteria right there that we can readily see. So a couple of things that we could do with that is, coconut oil pooling to help bust through their homes, so to speak. Saltwater rinsing, and make sure we're just brushing and flossing and stuff. But just thinking about, it's not just oral health, that's all throughout our body. We do have labs that we can kind of see if things are starting to take hold. But that's another aspect of your gut health. Step number 3 is supporting your gut microbiome and digestion. So again, we are what we absorb. So if we don't have the greatest digestion, we're feeling bloated after we eat. We're feeling that heaviness going on, maybe feeling lethargic. We need to make sure that we are boosting that digestion because that's why we eat, right? I mean, I know most of us, I know I do. I eat because it tastes good, but it's also for us to absorb and get that energy from. And then we've got number 4 is the beneficial organisms with probiotics that we talked about last time. So we're going to talk about grit and fiber and how that aids in digestion. So when we really take a step back and look, where does digestion even start? We talk a lot about stomach and stomach acid, but truly, where does it start? In the mouth. That's right. That's right. So, and even maybe if you want to take it one step further, what about even before then? We got hunger cues, right? So when we start to have that hunger cues going on, we're going to actually start to salivate, which is going to start already that digestion process because we've got enzymes there that's going to help break down that food. Okay, and then enters in the food. We chew it and it's called a bolus. So something think about, mushy baby food. Okay, and then as that process is going on, we're swallowing that. It's going through the esophagus, right? However, we got the pancreas is now going to start to be activated. It's got enzymes that it's going to shoot out so it can help digest as well. We also have the liver that's going to start to be activated because it houses the bile, right? Well, gallbladder houses the bile, liver produces the bile. All right, so that's going to be activated. So there is a lot of systems going on in the body just to break down this one bite of food. So as you'll see here, it's too, okay? because that is going to help with that churn. That's step 5. Okay, so we want to think about our stomachs. It's very muscular, and it's got to go and liquefy everything before it can even go into the small intestines. All right, and that whole process takes about 4 to 5 hours. So, when we think about every time that maybe we should be eating, it's around 4 to 5 hours is when our stomach is emptying. Okay. So as it's going on, think about maybe a washing machine, okay? That's going around and round in circles. That's exactly what's going on here on the stomach. So that's where grit can help facilitate digestion. I don't know how many people have chickens. I've been learning a lot about chickens here just for this presentation. So what I found very interesting, because Dr. Lewis had talked about this before in his podcast, is how chickens need grit. Different type of grit, because if you were chicken grit is like what, small pebbles and rocks and things like that. But they need that to enter in, go into their stomachs and help digest. It helps churn that food around, helps break it down, those hard foods, okay? Without grit, chickens end up with digestive issues. They end up being malnourished because they can't absorb what they're eating, right? And they also can quit laying eggs. So I found that very interesting, that we're not the only, ones that really got to think about our digestive health. It really is the core of overall health. So that goes back to here, that from Dr. Lewis's 26 ways that you stay hungry is mineral deficiencies. So our grit is going to be coming from minerals, okay? And they are actually even the hardest ones to digest, but it's going to help digest other nutrients. So taking it back a little bit, we've got this cute little kid making mud pies, right? Who all made mud pies as a kid? Right, yes. My mom tried to keep me in a sterile environment. She said as soon as she saw the first pile of mud go into my mouth, she was like, forget it. I'm done. I'm not sterilizing everything. Which honestly, looking back, was the best thing she could have done for me. Unless you were born with like some sort of autoimmune deficiency or something going on, I mean, we should be out playing in dirt. We should still continue to play in dirt because of those beneficial organisms, but that's where we're going to get our quote unquote grit from. Those little small particles that is going to get trapped into our mucus. We're going to swallow it, and it's going to make its way down to our stomachs and help with that digestion process. There has actually been a lot of studies out there that over time, our microbiome diversity, just as a whole population, the different varieties or species have gone down, which, I mean, you can't blame that for happening. I mean, we've had different viruses pop up. Everyone gets their guard up about, over maybe sterilizing our space. But just to know that, you can still get, I guess there's a fine line, if you're going to be mowing your yard or something, making sure that maybe if you choose not to wear a mask. I know some people do because of allergies, or if you're in my fenced-in part of the yard, that's where the dog goes to the bathroom. We're wearing a mask when because we don't want those type of spores, right? So make sure you use your judgment. But, don't be afraid to mow a patch without a mask. That's going to kick up some dirt. That's going to kick up some quote unquote grit that we need. Gardening, very rarely do I use garden gloves when I garden because I want that dirt. I want to get mixed up in it. Walking barefoot in our yard, playing and staying at the beach, sitting in the seawater. Dr. Lewis is a big one. If he knows that you're going to go somewhere near an ocean, he'll tell you to take a big gulp of seawater. Just because I mean, we probably don't do it on purpose. We do it anyways, just because if we're playing in it. But that right there is going to help add that grit and different beneficial organisms too. So, but if you don't see yourself doing a lot of those natural ways to get grit in, we do offer fulvic minerals, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So I wanted to make sure, because I don't think I've talked about this yet, about silent acid reflux. All right. So the stomach is, mechanically active and very muscular, and it pulverizes down the food. And as long as we've got, our good, pH level. So remember, we want a pH level of 1 to 3 when it comes to our stomach acid. As long as we've got some good grit, which most of us, if we live in the country or however, we're probably getting in already, it's going to help break down, digest, absorb. However, we could also still be having some silent acid reflux, and that's going to be harder to detect. When we think about that, there's a fermentation process that happens. So there's gases that build up. That's why we feel bloated, right? That's why it's called passing gas. So just think about those gases. It may not be the actual acid that comes up for acid reflux, but a gas mist. Okay, so if we know we have maybe poor dental health, and it's not because we don't try and take care of our teeth, it could be actually a mist of that coming up that's eroding teeth. We got to think if it's coming up as a mist, is it sometimes, is it hard to swallow because it's going to have that tightness around our throat. Hoarseness, if our voice starts changing and becoming like we're always, say, in a cold. Also nasal drip. Those are things about silent reflux that we need to make sure that we're definitely taking care of. And like I said, that's where that extra added, grit and fiber and make sure our digestion is really on par can help with that, because most of the time if we're like, we got a sore throat, postnasal drip, hoarseness, chronic sneeze, that just sounds like year-round allergies, right? We have no idea that it could be much deeper than that. All right, so we've got the grit down. Now we've got the fiber. Are we getting enough fiber in our diets? That can kind of be debatable. I mean, what is fiber? Fiber is not digested in the body, but it does help move like stool and help aid in digestion. So there are two different types, as you can see here, soluble and insoluble. We got soluble that dissolves in water and slows digestion to increase that feeling of being full and regulates blood sugar. So that's why, if you're not getting in your vegetables, I'm always like, get in your vegetables. You'll probably feel fuller, you got the fiber. If we're feeling like we have some constipation, maybe we need some insoluble fiber. It doesn't dissolve in water, helps soften the stool and move the food through the digestive system. Are we going to know what's what when we eat it? Absolutely not. So just get in your vegetables, fruits and vegetables, honestly. That's why they say, 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. That's going to help aid in that digestion. And a lot of those vegetables not only contain fiber, but prebiotics that we talked about before. Like asparagus is a big one. That's going to help regulate blood sugar, get that fiber in there, feeling fuller longer, help feed good bacteria. I mean, there's a lot with that. So, and we think about fiber as a whole, it does help, prevent overeating, it's a big one for lowering cholesterol, things like that, that we need to look at. So if you're not getting any fruits and vegetables, that might be your action step. So Dr. Lewis's recommendations here is going to be, don't overwash your garden vegetables. If you know that you are not putting pesticides and it comes from your garden, what you put in it, I just always dust mine off and eat it, type of thing. A lot of people will, especially go into the grocery store. I mean, we don't know who all has been handling that food, and you don't know what's been on it. So, you've probably heard of the dirty dozen, right? There's like, make sure you're washing that. Make sure you put in there some vinegar, baking soda, something to try and get all the more, I guess, harmful bacteria out of the way. But if you have your own garden, try not to overwash your garden vegetables. Eat shells of nuts. Pistachios, peanuts, they're harder to chew for sure, so make sure you're chewing thoroughly, but it's going to be part of that grit that we're talking about. Consuming prebiotics like inulin and hemp fiber. So I believe out in the kitchen, we do have a mixture of chia, seeds, flax seeds, and I think there's some hemp seeds in there too, all together. If not, you can always buy it from Walmart. It's in a bag, all three together. He's got to definitely eat dirt or other insoluble materials, but we're going to go with fulvic minerals here. I don't think in Bloomington or even where else, unless I am eating it from my garden. I'm not just out there eating dirt, even though I think I probably ate enough as a kid that I don't need to go scoop up a spoonful as an adult. But we do offer the fulvic humic minerals here that's free of charge to you. So just let me know and I can get that to you. So you just take a capful. I know on the back of it has a lot of directions to it, but I know we just knock mine on back. Some people add it to their coffee. I know Dr. Lewis adds it to his coffee. But when we think about the benefits of fulvic minerals and trace minerals, it comes from the earth. It's going to be fossils and rocks and things that over time have been pulverized and kind of gritty. I don't know if you've seen, mine is very dark, almost like a charcoal brown, right? And there is residue in it. So, I mean, you're definitely getting it from the earth at that point. But one of the things that maybe we don't talk a lot about is that, yes, it does help gut health, immune, nutrient absorption, cellular function, but we got to think about supports also detoxification. So that fulvic acid that we have helps bind to certain toxins and helps detoxify the body. And that is very important for our organs. The liver is our biggest detoxification organ, but it's also used. I mean, everything that we eat and breathe and everything goes straight through the liver. And we need that also for digestion. So just kind of thinking about that, when we are maybe eating and drinking, just being mindful. If we are noticing any elevation in some lab markers, we do check for liver function, stuff that we need to maybe have a conversation with, because that's very important. And it's so important that the body can heal the liver. The liver can heal itself. I've had seen studies and things where people had to have like part of their liver taken out and it will like regenerate. The body knows, whoever created us knows that was super important for us to have. All right. Any questions so far? All right, I know we're making this short and sweet, but when we think about how we're going to implement this, just our action steps. Fruits and vegetables is what we're going to focus on this month. If you're getting in like one vegetable here and there, try and aim for 2 consistently, 2 servings. So when you think about a serving size, what does that look like? My hands are bigger than yours, so use your own. This size is going to be a serving. All right, so I always try to tell people, 1 serving a day with your dinner or lunch, or try to aim for 2. So that way you're going to get more of that fiber in there. All right, so we've got beans, sweet potatoes, carrots, broccoli, berries, fruit, oats, quinoa, artichokes. Those are the ones with the highest amounts of fiber. Honestly, just focus on vegetables. It really doesn't matter what's on your plate as long as you're ingesting them, right? Okay. So that is next month we're gonna talk about on speed digestion, which is how long it should take to digest foods and how to maybe speed it up along if maybe we are lacking. So we're almost done. If there's any questions whatsoever, just go ahead and send them my way. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been great. Thank you.